GM lads, it's been a while. We're excited to be back with you. A lot has happened in the last 6 weeks since we had an episode. I mean, I don't even know where to start. The market is gone a little bit insane. We can take a look here, but uh, key thing to note is Justin is proud to be the ETH guy once again. He's tweeted so Ethereum up 21% on the week, while Bitcoin is flat. So
It feels really good. It feels really good because I feel like Steady Lads, we kind of capitulated at the bottom. Like I think we paused regular weekly uploads literally at the exact bottom. And for I think we've been doing the show on and off for 2.5, almost 3 years, and every week we get a guest on and I just get dunked on. Like, why is this guy the ETH guy? Why is this guy the ETH guy? To the point where I was close to capitulating. I'm not the ETH guy. Don't call me that. But here we are. I was right. We're winning. Everyone's winning.
you're right. They were
Yeah.
wrong.
They
You
were
got a
wrong.
big a big check to show for it. Are you gonna
And
do this
there's
new
still room to run. Still room to run.
still room to run? But as soon as we go to all-time highs, you're jumping off the ship.
Yeah, I think my plan right now is after all time high, at and after all time highs, sell 5% of basically everything each day until I'm fully out. I can't round trip again. I can't go back to the lows, and I feel good. I made the money I need to make. I'm fine. I'm good. Like enough is enough.
It's a passing of the torch. The next generation can go through their bear market and hold on, just like Justin. They can, your story will be told to the next generation, and they will go through like probably like the dip from 8K down to 4K, and they'll
So you
be
think? Do you think
talking
we're
about
back?
that.
Do you guys think ETH surely hitting all time highs?
I mean, if not now, when, right? I mean, we have all these Ponzi vehicles working. Tom Lee, he's like the main character now. He's saying ETH is going to go to 10K because of stablecoins. I'm all for it.
The chance Ethereum always had to turn it around, because we've been talking for years, like how is it going to turn around? I've been saying consistently, like it has to be Wall Street. Wall Street has to adopt ETH and just make it the real, and it's well positioned for that because of the neutrality of it. It's been so neutral that it can just be taken over, and it's cheap enough that it can still be bought up in large sizes. And the good thing for ETH is that now they're saying ETH is the Wall Street token and Solana is the Silicon Valley token, which is completely different than, a year ago we were saying Ethereum is like the European Union, Solana is like the, maybe that's the Wall Street token. So good job by just waiting it out and getting adopted. And now these treasury companies are just the beginning. I mean, the ETFs are flowing.
So you think, I mean, Solana said they were decentralized NASDAQ, but maybe it was ETH all along. And then to your point from many, many months ago, maybe Solana was never decentralized NASDAQ. It was decentralized Macau.
Centralized Macau.
Yeah, I think it's a little premature though, right? Like, so ETH BTC is still like 70% off highs. And then if you go back to 2017, it's like 80% off highs. So like, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. The dunking is a little excessive now by, people I'm seeing on the timeline, but it's looking good. It's looking good.
I mean, it's literally almost done a 2x on the BTC chart, and BTC has done amazing. So this is at least something. If you're an ETH holder, and I don't know many ETH holders, everyone I know is capitulated. I'm still holding my dusty bag. It's like a medium-sized bag, so I haven't felt the need to do anything with it, but it's more of a let's see what happens.
Do you think CT's like crypto Twitter and our ecosystem's positioning is relevant, or is it really just about the big money at this point? Like, does everyone does Ansem at some point have to come back and say Solana or ETH looks good here, long ETH, and then like everyone starts aping in, or is that not as important when we have the treasury vehicles, the ETFs, etc.?
Yeah, it's all about the TradFi money, right?
It's not important. Yeah, it's not important. I'm sure the Kobe's of the world are riding the wave. The old guns. They know an ETH run when they see it. So that battalion is in. But I don't think the new kids on the block are relevant or even going to get into too much ETH. I think some of the treasuries of the projects that are holding ETH are probably happy if they can sell some. Um, I mean, I don't know exactly how high we get. It does feel like the momentum is very strong. I saw one analyst, I think it was like the Citadel Securities analyst, he said it smells like higher than lower. And I thought that was brilliant. It really does smell like, for those of us that have been in the markets for many, many years, there's too much momentum right now. Like the rate of increase can't be slowed down that fast where we just suddenly collapse. So it feels inevitable that, it's higher because of the rate of acceleration here. But obviously, like, there's going to be some pretty steep corrections after that, because whatever is happening is not necessarily like the fair market price of every single asset. But uh,
Yeah.
we do have a couple guests we can talk to about this. Go ahead, Taiki.
Yeah. I do like that line, right? It smells like higher, right? Like sniff, sniff. I think we all feel it in our bones. Like, this is finally ETH's time. Now, then the question is, does it peak out at like 0.05 Bitcoin, ETH BTC, 0.06? I don't really know the answer to that. A question I have for you guys is like, like my mental framework is, I think once ETH breaks new highs on like the USD pair, I think we're going to have like roughly 3 months until it's going to be over, or you want to be just like be selling into that. So I think we're like in the 7th, 8th inning ish. But like, what do you guys think? Are we in this 5th inning? Just general thoughts on like where we are in the cycle.
My macro take in general is that things are melting up after the Trump bill. So since the last update, I really didn't think that we could go much higher, because I knew that the monetary policy was not going to be supportive. So, and indeed, they haven't even cut rates. So they've been sticking to their guns. However, Trump has managed with like one vote, I think, like they need the Vance to pass the Senate bill. They managed to get this bill through. And I think that has completely changed just the fiscal side of things. And we are in a period of fiscal dominance. The amount of money coming in from the government is ridiculous. I mean, these corporate tax cuts are not necessary, and they're just adding more fuel to the fire. I do think eventually, there's going to be consequences that are very bad.
What do you think the off ramp is, right? Like, so for me in my position, after ETH breaks all time highs, I want to be DCing out like over a long period of time to probably dollars, right? Like, I think Bitcoin's obviously great here, but I don't expect it to go to 2x or 250K from here without a major correction, let's say. I think gold's very expensive now, right? Like, so what's the answer? Is it just to hold dollars and earn the treasury rate? Is it to put it in the S&P? Like, if you're selling crypto now because you made a lot of money, what are you buying?
I don't think gold is expensive. I mean, it's been flat. I was checking. It's been flat for like months now. So yeah, it did have like this 25%, sudden run up. But it has been flat for a while. So it will probably get a new leg. I would get some gold exposure. I do think Bitcoin is inevitable that it goes higher. So even if you're selling other alts, I would get some Bitcoin. It feels very early. So yesterday, one of the headlines we saw was Trump is considering an executive order to allow gold and crypto to be put into retirement accounts. I don't know what crypto that means. Is it back to the old days where he got elected and they were talking about doing a crypto reserve? And is it Bitcoin? Are they going to put XRP in there? Like what is going to be in retirement accounts? Is it going to be the Uber drivers retiring with XRP? So speaking of XRP, we have a resident expert. So Alexander Good.
Feels like I got feels like I got summoned just now. You're like,
yeah, we willed you into existence.
What's up, everyone?
The genie appears. Alex, great to have you. So, is XRP going to be a retirement asset for Uber drivers? Is the first question.
I mean, I would argue that we're seeing some evidence of that. I was just posting in our Discord that, like, the 2x XRP ETF, which is just futures, traded $150 million yesterday. So there is appetite for, I think, XRP as if you also look at XRP, it's an older demographic than most coins, and that's true across countries. Like, if you go to the XRP Apex conference, there are a lot of people there who are, kind of more middle-aged demographic. In Korea, the meme in Korea, which I guess doesn't get spread around, is listen to your mom, because the idea is that your mom bought XRP in 2017 and she's been telling you that you need to buy it for the last 8 years, and now she's finally right. So I do think there is like an activation channel with with XRP and retirement accounts, probably more so than some other coins.
So it's going to be really hard to get an Uber from now on, is what you're saying. I did want to bring up this epic thread that you wrote. I think it got a lot of attention. It's a very long thread, but the one thing that I loved is that you start thinking about the social contract and how the world is changing, and how some of the assumptions that the current social contract is based on. Once those assumptions change, we end up in a completely new paradigm, in a new equilibrium. What started this rant? Have you just been thinking about this stuff for like a long time, and you just put it all on paper?
Yeah, I think there is always a question for me of what happens after the super bubble. The super bubble is this idea that society is a meritocracy, but the reality is that every time the system blows up, the government always patches it back together. So it's not actually a meritocracy. It's like all the guys who blew up the 2008 financial crisis all went to work at Cerberus afterwards and bought their entire mortgage book and printed hundreds of millions of dollars of P&L. I used to trade mortgage REITs, and the guy who runs AGNC, the big mortgage REIT, is like literally the guy at Lehman who blew the system up. And so there's kind of like this lack of faith in society. The question is okay, is this thing all going to crash, or are we going to come up with something new? And the sort of Thiel argument is okay, well, we know what something new is. It's just the Chinese communist social contract, right? We've got a pretty clear idea of what an AI-driven authoritarian society looks like in production right now. And I'm like, that's depressing. I wonder if there's a better way to go other than communist authoritarianism after this thing kind of blows up. And I got interested in AI because of the religious activation of the average AI user. There is sort of the EAC movement originally, where people are engaging with AIs in a sort of kind of predictable way, because when people are talking to AIs, they're not talking to human intelligence, right? They're talking to something which is external to human intelligence, which already creates a kind of spiritual feel to ChatGPT, which I think is why you're seeing all these threads on AI psychosis, right? Because people are engaging with ChatGPT in a way which is different from just a coding tool, or different than just a social media tool. They're engaging with it deeply, emotionally, and almost even related to advice. And so if you listen to Sam Altman, he's like, what are people using ChatGPT for? The younger demographic, he's under 30 years old. They're engaging with this to get life advice a lot of the times. And so you already have the seeds of a kind of normative system where you're engaging with a non-human intelligence for normative statements about how to live your life. And that's the typical use case. And that's what's driving, ChatGPT, the number one app in productivity. As you probably are aware, Anthropic has a much better model for coding. And it's just actually a better and more powerful model as well. And it has just a tiny fraction of ChatGPT's usage.
Yeah, I mean, let's get into some of the details of the thesis, because some of it is kind of profound in terms of what will happen. But in terms of what you just mentioned, people are using AI for more conversational and emotional things. There's been a lot of hype on crypto Twitter. Is this Grok waifu gonna one shot the next generation? What do you see as the emotional development of these kind of characters?
Yeah, I had this kind of thesis about why AI is going to cause aggregate productivity to decelerate, and this is pretty related to it. My thesis was it's pretty pornographic for both males and females. For males, it's obviously the image and video generation, but back when I was in advertising, one thing we learned was that personalization can just drastically increase engagement with ads. And I right when the AI video stuff came out, people always tell me I look like the guy from The Office. And so I was trolling a friend, and I put myself on a clip from The Office using one of these services where you map your face onto a video. And then I was like watching ads on it was like I think it was on the New York Times. It was like a major display website, and I got an ad that was targeted with my own face on it. I'm like, oh, like that was kind of when I was like, oh shit, like, this is accelerated beyond what I thought. And so it's obvious that people are already personalizing advertising. And so I'm like, okay, like it's pretty obvious that, you know, ChatGPT is deeply cash flow negative. You know, Elon is running this thing out of his personal account, basically. You know, XAI, I guess, is funded by venture at this point, but there has to be a view about how to fund all this stuff. You know, it has to be a view about how to get positive unit economics. And the best way to do it is to deliver addictive products. You know, that's like a well-known, you know, cash flow generating machine. And I believe that's like why all the companies that are at the forefront of AI development, you know, whether it be ByteDance, whether it be NVIDIA, whether it be Meta, all of them are excellent at engaging with the video game space specifically, right? Like, you know, it's social media, video games, pornography. Like these are all the vehicles which AI can pay for the data centers. And so, you know, I got super bearish on kind of, you know, societal progress and productivity growth, because all of those things actually decrease your productivity. They don't really increase your productivity. And the people who become 10x engineers are actually like writing ad software and writing video games. So I'm like, GTA will be really good, but maybe we won't get robots.
Just as a counterpoint, wouldn't you agree in your experience, like that the top, let's say 10% of people contribute 90% of the productivity to society, or like there's a huge distribution here where it's a small number of people are doing most of the work? And in your experience, because this is my experience, those people that are your overachievers that are actually making a dent and moving the way we're doing things, like I don't see those people being distracted by these sorts of things. Like I personally have never met anyone that I would think is a candidate to have like an AI girlfriend or boyfriend, right?
You don't know me, man. I was kidding.
But it's hard to get on board this thesis because like people do say this a lot, but I just don't know how much appetite there actually is for that. And then I think in crypto we have this tendency to get really doomer because we're kind of like aligned with the worse the dollar does, the better we do. This is the whole Bitcoin thesis you mentioned earlier. Like I think you said something like when this ends or collapses. Like, isn't it possible and shouldn't it be the base case that, you know, things just keep going on as normal, productivity keeps increasing? Sure, there's some inflation, but do we have to be so doomer?
I think a funny statistic about this, I was looking at, well, so like Mark Benioff went on CNBC and he's like, 40% of Salesforce's code is written by AI now. And you're like, I bet Salesforce's financials must be really good. And so I actually, like, you know, I pulled up Salesforce's 8K. I'm like, wow, net cash flow from operations is only up 6% year on year, right? It's like, okay, so you have 40% of your code, which is written by AI, but you're actually not generating materially more cash flow. So what happens if 100% of your code is written by AI? You get 12% operating income expansion, right? Like, it's like, that's not even really financially interesting, right? And so I think I think where I'm coming from is that people like us actually don't really drive GDP very much, right? We're actually like primarily speculative capital, and when you look at the aggregates of you know, what has happened over the last 20 years. You know, basically, if you kind of look at the increase in the national debt and unfunded liabilities of the United States, it's just vastly outpaced any net income growth in the stock market. And like one sort of piece of analysis that I look at is like, what would happen if you increased the tax rate of the Russell 3000 to its 1960 highs, right? Because like we have a similar fiscal situation to post World War II. And we obviously have a completely different demographic situation. And like, you know, the answer was, even if you took corporate taxes all the way to the previous all-time highs, you would only chip away like 1/2 of the big, beautiful bill, right? You would only do like 1/2 of the deficit spending. And then not only would you only do 1/2 of it, you'd also destroy all the net income growth in the United States since 2005, right? So basically what that means is that the way to view the economy is that it's been a giant unfunded fiscal transfer from basically the currency reserve to the ultra rich, who are actually not increasing productivity. They're just they're just basically manufacturing cash flow due to the proximity to the Federal Reserve. And so I just think like the configuration is stable because Trump is in power, and so I think it's going to accelerate. But I don't actually I think that's in the aggregate statistics, for example, like next year, U.S. GDP growth is expected to be below 2%. When Microsoft started this whole party, they said we're investing in AI capex with the assumption that GDP is going to be growing at 10%.
You're talking about like real. This is like real GDP, like after inflation. Yeah. I mean, I think to touch on your point about the, I talk often around how the inequality is just going to keep increasing, and it's like hyperdrive now. I mean, the holders of risk assets versus non-risk assets are hugely diverging. And if you have money in bonds because you're retiring soon and you're playing the 40-60 safe or whatever, you're just going to get destroyed over the next 10 years. And there's obviously going to be a political cost in terms of, voters being wanting to eat the rich again. And, we had the CEO that got shot by that kid, and then people were like cheering him on. Like this kind of stuff is probably just going to get more and more entrenched, and that seems very bad. So in that sense, we kind of get back to like, what is the equilibrium? Is it we throw this circus, food and circus to the masses and just give them like GTA 6 with like some uber hot waifu AI girl and just hope that they leave us alone to do stuff? Or like what is the actual equilibrium here? It doesn't seem like, to combat Justin, like I don't think it's doomerist. It's just like there's an equilibrium we're clearly gravitating towards, right, Alex?
I mean, the equilibrium is like, what do you do? Even the most recent Genius Act or a set of crypto legislation is like, let's cut the bank's capital requirements. Let's enable OCC for bank custody of crypto. Let's put this stuff in people's retirements account. Like, let's pump asset prices as hard as we possibly can. That's the playbook, right? Like it's very clearly the playbook. And so I think, that's going to keep being the playbook. I don't see Trump becoming a populist. I do think he's going to lose. I think the Republicans will lose power in 3.5 years because I don't think this will be popular. But in the meanwhile, I think it's like, I think that's like why XRP is mooning, right? Or going back to the original discussion, it's like the plan is to deregulate the financial system and to run this thing up as fast as we can in order to hopefully, quote unquote, grow our way out of it. I don't know if that's possible.
Let me just differentiate between the two monkey brains we have. We have one side which is like, oh my God, like this is what the world's going towards. And then the other one, let's just call it our portfolio brain. Like, we have to still optimize our portfolio in the meantime, regardless of, where we're heading. And, we've talked about how bonds are trash. We've talked about how like right now they're just trying to pump stuff up as hard as possible for our listeners. And, even for us, obviously, whatever crypto we've been holding has been going up. We've all been burned too long by like round tripping a bunch of stuff. And, there's some desire to take some profits here and there, but on the other side, like it smells like, we have to go higher. They're just pumping as hard as they can. They just passed this massive bill. Like you said, the fiscal side of this is just so enormous. Does it make sense to try to just position into like, more legit assets? Does it make sense to go like all the way into the spectrum and try to find a blow off top? Like, how do you think it makes sense right now?
I still like the whole, part of the reason I was into XRP was because I liked the political reflexivity element. I think it's very, very clear the Trump administration wants crypto to thrive in the United States because of their financial positions, and they're in power. And so a lot of the coins which were hated in the previous administration, whether that be XRP, whether that be HBAR, whether that be XLM, where it's kind of like this like institutional integration thesis. Those coins are probably, people don't care about them, or they forgot about them. And I think that's like an interesting, the DeFi sector is another kind of permutation of that. And so there's kind of like this like basket of coins which relates to institutional adoption. And similarly with equity, like it's kind of already priced into equities. I think maybe my contrarian take is that Bitcoin is not like the cleanest expression of this kind of reflexivity bet. There's like a lot of leverage capital going into it. But Bitcoin is like kind of well suited for like what happens after the mess, right? It's like, okay, like after we blow up the banking sector, then you want to own Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is always like, like Bitcoin or like Silicon Valley Bank, when it imploded, that was like the first God candle of Bitcoin. People were like, all right, like, Satoshi's back.
So do you think like we're like an alt season where Bitcoin's gonna lag and then it's gonna pick up after we kind of blow up?
Yeah, I mean, there's like the whole Bitcoin treasury meta. You're like, okay, like what's the thesis here? The thesis is that you can get equity capital plowed into assets. And you're like, okay, well, what's the price impact on Bitcoin? It's like probably not as much as like an altcoin, right? Like an ETH treasury company, ETH is less liquid than Bitcoin. Of course, an ETH treasury company is going to drive the ETH price higher. So I think as we like rotate down the stack of quality, the effects are more extreme. And so if we're going to do this type of financial reflexivity thing, the worst coins are actually going to perform better in some ways.
How about meme coins? Like what do you put meme coins in this current run up? We're seeing a lot of mixed stuff. We'll talk about the Pump IPO later, but ICO, not IPO yet. So we'll see. But like, where do those position? I mean, they're a little bit different than the like quote unquote institutional coins.
Yeah, I think they're not as good just because they have actually, it was like ironically the Torres XRP ruling that kind of brought meme coins formally into like, okay, these are not securities, right? Like that was like the thing that got Coinbase off the fence about meme coins. Was they're like, okay, like, if there's on expectation of profits, we can list this stuff in the United States, even under the Biden administration. And so I think they're interesting from a just very like I think there's some meme coins that have attention flywheels, right? So an example would be the Trump meme coin. And similarly, I think Murad has done a very good job promoting a basket of meme coins in a way that's like capturing attention. Actually, he's like narrowed the basket, which I think is good. But I'm not like structurally like, oh yeah, like we're in like a meme coin super cycle. I'm like, if anything, I think the market price action is telling us that there are a lot of coins that are not maybe meme coins that are performing very well.
Is it basically that the amount of capital that these like, Zoomer degens have is just not anywhere near the amount of capital that the doctors and the dentists have, basically?
Well, there's like an interesting dynamic. I think I tweeted an economist chart talking about wealth distribution in our society, and it's now that 10% of GDP is inheritance. So a lot of the money that's flowing into the speculative markets is actually from rich kids. It's not from like people trying to make it, which I think is like what people want to tell the story. People are like, oh, you need to hyper gamble your way into the upper class is the story. The reality is probably closer to like the upper class's children are hyper gambling their way into the lower class, right? Like that's like probably more accurate. So that's kind of like bullish on meme coins, right? That would be the flip side, is that the inheritance money that's going to the kids in West Village who are paying $8,000 a month for rent and don't have jobs, like that's the stuff that's going like straight into Murad's portfolio.
Alex, before we leave you, I do want to ask like about crypto XAI. Obviously, we had like a little cycle last time. What do you think is going to be the resurgence? Because I mean, I have to believe there's going to be a big boom in crypto XAI coins at some point. But where do you see that coming from, and like how do you see that category reviving.
When you say crypto X AI, do you mean crypto without
Any coin that like as part of its token is meant to be like an AI coin. I know Taiki was saying Fartcoin was an AI coin. That was speculative, but like
Hey,
you
it
know,
worked.
Yeah,
obviously, yeah.
I have a thesis kind of around this, right? So I have two categories that I really, really like. The first is AI backed stable coins. Essentially because of the big beautiful bill, GPU expenditures are tax deductible, and that's a huge difference in terms of the yield dynamics associated with financing a GPU. So there's a world where you get tax-free GPU purchases for startups and like a lot of venture money, and crypto is like kind of an ideal way to bring this on chain, especially if you have a lack of regulatory environments around stable coin requirements, which is like definitely the case. And so that's one category where basically I think there's going to be all this money flowing in trying to chase yield, buying GPUs or like quote unquote RWA, but the RWA is the actual GPUs. And then the second area is I guess proof of work, right? And obviously I have a position here because I'm along my brother's protocol, but I think the cleanest representation of crypto is proof of work, right? As we know from Bitcoin, and there's no real reason why you can't secure a proof of work chain with AI calculation. There's something that my brother's developed called proof of logits. It's essentially using AI inference to mine blocks and then validate them in a Merkle tree, similar to Bitcoin, right? And then kind of the final area, which I'm excited about, which is I guess my coin, which is Post Fiat, is everyone in crypto is pretty familiar with DAOs and how poorly they are administered. And there is just a governance problem in crypto with centralized actors, right? Like so generally, like the problem with DAOs is there's a guy in the middle making all kinds of suboptimal decisions. There's no auditability for these decisions. And my protocol is kind of like, okay, can we take this governance layer, make it deterministic and verifiable, and use the mathematical properties of mode collapse with large language models to be like, here's an objective decision about how rewards are allocated and how validators are selected. And that is how, I think the contra would be like, BitTensor's OG model where they're like, okay, it's like a super political process.
This requires AI to get good enough, and I think this was part of your post where it gets so strong and like all the AIs converge on like a shared truth that basically you can, like human beings just kind of outsource what the truth is to these things, and they can not do it yet. I've tried. I was playing we had this market making game that we played last time on the show that Vicky brought us, and I've tried different questions, and sometimes the answers of ChatGPT to some of these questions is not fully accurate. But as we get better and better, that's kind of where things like you're talking about, and maybe not just DAOs, but like political decisions in general start getting made by people just agreeing that this is going to be a base truth that we can rely on. How long do you think that's going to take, technology wise?
I think it's starting to get there on the more powerful models. They're already kind of converging on very reasonable outputs for simple decisions, and more complex decisions will be like kind of a function also of context windows, right? Because with a 200,000 context window on Opus or something like that, it's just not enough to pull in a lot of qualitative data and make a decision, even with like a 8K or something like that. But as context windows grow, the capability of these models to come up with kind of objective decisions in like a one-shot verifiable run is way better. And I think like the intuitive area for this, the crypto categories that are going to benefit the most are going to be like proof of authority, right? Because that's the area where there's the biggest centralization issue. And any sort of crypto protocol with a big foundation in the middle will have a lot of benefits from that. So I'll leave it there, and then that's foreshadowing to future discussions.
Yeah, and we'll have to chat a lot more because this stuff is just going to keep evolving at such a hyper speed. Alex, thank you so much for coming on.
Cheers. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Cheers,
Thanks, Alex.
All right, lads, we have Santiago here with us now. We've got some interesting topics. We'll talk about the Pump ICO. We'll talk about, this ever going on discussion about Bitcoin versus Sol versus ETH. And then we'll talk about Treasury companies. We have a couple segments, and then we'll do pasta. But Santi, have you been expecting this sudden like explosion of the market? Like, have you had your seatbelt buckled?
I don't know, man. I every time I've sort of been long enough in this game that I've lost any hope of trying to time this market. But you're just gonna you're I think in my chair, I just assume that any given day I wake up, the market can be dramatically up or dramatically down, and I'm just gonna stay unbothered, moisturized in my lane. But the reality is, like, you could be a cynic or a skeptic in how like crypto trades. Like, we can over intellectualize why these things are pumping, and then someone pulls up the M2 chart and says, just flows. Like, don't overthink it. This is a levered NASDAQ. Call it a day. Everything in the traditional markets is hitting all-time high. Crypto people want to go farther off in the risk spectrum. They've downplayed the geopolitical tension. They've downplayed the Trump schizophrenic tweets. So like the market just gets used to all of that. And then you look past. So I don't know, like, are we pumping because the Genius Act got passed, or because a lot of these like fundamental things that you guys are paying attention to that I think that over like a 2, 3, 5 year, 10-year period, yeah, absolutely, this space is going to 10x. Like, we're going to be at a $40 trillion asset class in 10 years, probably. And so the question is, do you really want to just like over intellectualize or just be fancy in how you trade with leverage, all this stuff? I have done it as a younger buck. I don't have any time to do that now. Nor I think it pays in the long term. Like we were just talking about before this segment, how many funds do you guys think outperform Bitcoin? They get paid $220, professional investors, to think, breathe, try to get an edge over retail. How many of those guys do you think actually outperform Bitcoin? And they have access to the early stage deals and all this.
Is it a skill issue, or is it just the fact that it's stacked against them? Because if Bitcoin is just trudging along as a pure asset and they have to get returns that beat it, I mean, they're probably doing better than traditional VCs, aren't they? I don't know. I mean, depends on if they're AI focused or not.
Yeah, I think so. Like, well, it depends, right? If you were a fund and you raised 2022, you're not. And if you're a traditional venture fund, but if your vintage is before 2020, like before like the Fed funds rate went to 4, yeah, you would, like, unless you did something terribly wrong, you should have outperformed the traditional like MVCA venture top tier. But even then, I think just a lot of capital is flooded in. Everyone like invested in venture and these deals, and I think it dovetails into, I think, what you guys talk about in this segment, like which assets are you going to pick? There's just a lot of overhang. Like, certainly if you invested like sub 50 million in an infrastructure project that is now trading at $1 billion, like, yeah, okay, you're sitting pretty. But there's just a lot of overhang that I think, even though we're pumping, I would say that like there's still some projects that need to absorb a lot of the unlock. And so I think if you're just sitting here, like, one of the things that I'm paying so much attention to is, okay, if for every incremental percentage increase in Bitcoin, what is the beta of every other asset that you have farther out on the risk spectrum, and are you getting compensated? Because now everyone comes out and says, it's that time in the market where I'm just a genius, and they say, told you, Deepin is now pumping, Ethereum is now pumping, everything is pumping. You're like, yeah, but did it outperform Bitcoin?
In my own experience, it's been really interesting. Like when I, started making more content and having the opportunity to angel invest starting 2021, 2022, seemed like a great opportunity at the time. But I track this stuff very carefully. I'm very confident that just buying Bitcoin would have been much easier, much better return, liquidity. And most of the things I invested in have not fully unlocked, have not started to unlock. And there's just like uncertain about whether there's even demand for these assets to begin with. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I don't think it's at all surprising, though. I mean, most hedge funds outperform the S&P. Most venture funds underperform the S&P. So I think it's to be expected. And I think a lot of the edge in crypto venture is probably going to continue to go away.
Yeah. And to follow up on that, I think most of us agree that, liquid is probably better than like cutting checks right now, or like writing checks right now. And you said you're unbothered, right? And I'm sure you are. But I think before we started recording, you said that you own basically zero Ethereum. And I remember some time ago you said that you think Solana is going to flip Ethereum, and I really like your reasoning, right, or your logic for how you got there. But do you have any updated thoughts, given that Solid has slightly underperformed and the Ethereum is finally producing pumps, right? It's no longer has dysfunction. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still very much predicated on. I'm looking at Solana is still $100 billion fully diluted market. Ethereum is 3 times that, I believe, or more, 430. So the question is, like, on a relative basis, do you think that Solana should be 1/3 or 1/4 of the value of Ethereum L1? And I still think that that's mispriced over a 3-year period. I think that ratio continues to go up and to the right. Unless there's like some the only thing that has given me pause is I think Solana finds itself in an interesting place where Pump has now rage quit to some extent or to a full extent, and then Hyperliquid has come around. And if the thesis for Solana was it's the most retail friendly chain, and you saw that because you have Phantom, the whole apparatus of like Phantom, Pump, and that ecosystem, that is just, it has been the place where normies have just onboarded in the vast majority. Yeah.
In addition to that, I mean, what are your thoughts that we're seeing? Like Wall Street is coming, but they want to have their own execution environments, and it seems pretty clear to me they actually do like the layer 2 model. And do you think that diminishes the Solana thesis? Like, why do you have to go to Solana when you can use one of these layer 2s?
Excellent point. Look, I don't think it diminishes. I generally think that it's expanding the pie, so it's not diminishing. On an absolute basis, I just think like you're probably alluding to Robinhood launching an Arbitrum, and you can look at Arbitrum's performance on a ETH basis and Bitcoin basis, and that chart just looks nasty. I say this licking my wounds as an early investor in Arbitrum. And you would say, look, they built phenomenal tech. I do think like even us Inversion, we are going to launch our own chain. I think the calculus for enterprises is clear, and institutions that they want to prefer their own customizable environment, and they're going to do that either through an L1 out of the box like Avalanche allows you to, or Ethereum just has more Lindy. I think BlackRock, I think back in the day, like last year, they announced and they supported a couple of chains where they wanted to build, and Solana was not one of them. And I think a lot of that was you just had so much meme coin activity that you probably think Larry just thinks twice, right? Can that change? Yeah, I don't think it changes my rationale as to why I think Sol probably the Sol ETH ratio probably goes higher. Unless Solana can't figure out Fire Dancer, because if they can't figure out Fire Dancer, and I'm not like a technical gigabrain here, nor do I pretend to be one, but I am paying attention to that. I do think that the people within Solana are like a bit worried about Hyperliquid. Yeah,
they're definitely worried about Hyperliquid, and they're also trying to fight this stocks battle. They got X stocks, and then you have we talked about how savage Vlad is. He's got his cravat in Cannes. He's just showing up and putting on a spectacle. I think the initial volumes I was seeing on those X stocks are quite low, and the liquidity is still being figured out in terms of like, is this a broker model, and what is the demand exactly? So there's a lot to play out there, but Solana probably needs to get out of just meme coin territory. Let's talk about the Pump ICO. So I know you're an early investor in Pump. You're one of the lucky ones that I imagine the valuation is still extremely good as a return. We talked about not many things are returning. There's been a lot of mixed comments and mixed reactions as to their launch. It's a very unique launch from a market maker and just from a general trader perspective. I love being a part of the whole thing because it's such a unique thing. You don't have $1 billion+ raise going liquid day one very often. I think it's maybe like, it's been forever since we had something like this happen. And it created these dynamics where even like market neutral funds were starting to get in on the action, because you in essence had Hyperliquid have like hundreds of millions of open interest. And this is something we saw with the Trump meme coin as well. It showed time and time again that if there's a new on-chain launch with a huge amount of attention, Hyperliquid does become the venue for most of the open interest, at least at the beginning. I think there's a couple of reasons for it. One is they're pretty quick, to shoot and get the contract up. you allow Americans non-KYC, whatever, everyone's just going in. It just becomes like this like suck of liquidity, and liquidity begets liquidity. I noticed some of the major exchanges. I saw like Bybit completely dropped the ball on this. Their maximum open interest was 500K. On Hyperliquid, I don't think there is a maximum. You can just like do whatever. Binance was a little bit smarter. It was 12.5 million. So I think that's why they started to catch up. But there's so many aspects of this that made it fascinating. The pre-market, people trying to get allocation, and then they kind of got rugged on some of the centralized exchanges. They thought they got it, then they hedged, and then it went up. It was chaos. Did any of you guys? I guess like as Americans, you're not supposed to participate in the ICO. You have to go through somebody.
I participated in the ICO and also long the perp. I mean, obviously participating in the ICO went well, and then participating in the perp not so much. Personally, I think it's very undervalued here. I actually think like at some point before this all comes crashing down, it's going to hit 10 billion FDB. I think just looking at the top coins, like I think Pump.fun deserves to be up there. I think it has a ton of mindshare, a ton of activity, and also they're a very ambitious team. Like I think going after live streaming is obviously like a huge challenge, but I think it's ambitious. And if
Let's bring up the chart because it's been a fascinating ride since it came out. I think it kind of traded around this 25% premium on the ICO for a while, where just even like the $100 million checks. This was, I mean, I don't want to get your thoughts on this, Santi, because I was very surprised that the $100 million checks and the $50 million checks, this is all on chain. They started selling tokens, I guess, because they're just like, oh, well, I'm up 50% in a week. Whatever. Like, I'm just going to take some profit. And they sold significant amounts. So a lot of profit capture. And then on the 16th, we had this pump to 7 cents where they started doing buybacks. And as soon as the buybacks stopped, we've just sort of been bleeding back down. Let's start with this like huge market neutral kind of activity. Like, what do you think about $100 million checks selling in a week?
Well, I mean, you're a trader, right? If you have the opportunity to clip that, or it's IRR, I mean, you're going to take it in size. Of course you take it. The other dynamic here is, I mean, funds. It's been a weird cycle. I think if you zoom out, if you weren't allocated to very specific assets, and by that I mean Bitcoin, Hyperliquid, and Solana, or maybe like Fartcoin, you did not outperform Bitcoin. And so fund managers are feeling the pain. You're thinking, how much am I going to clip in December of carry? And I'm still underwater. And so I feel like it's just been a funky cycle, whereas maybe we're catching up to like where everything pumps. But like you're going to take the win. And you're going to feel the pressure to take the win faster. And so I think I'm just saying it doesn't help that like it's been a far more concentrated cycle in terms of returns. And so not surprised. I mean, the market's just going to do its thing. And so I've generally tried to shy away from the first couple of weeks or even months, like Hyperliquid, for instance. If you pull that chart, the airdrop, and of course, like there was just a 3-month period. It was kind of like you had to recycle, you had to like parse through all of those sellers and absorb that. And then it just went, of course, Liberation Day, like it went all the way down to 10. But like that, I would say December all the way to March, maybe even mid-February, you had that, what I would call trading and changing of hands dramatically, or the airdrop folks. Pump is different, right? Because you didn't have an airdrop, but you had big funds and huge amounts of capital to the tune of, what is it, 800 million that just bought at 4.5. So, and I would think you got to clear through that, right? And people are just going to continue to sell. And
it's so much money, right? Like that's why, like, I'm so it's so expected. Like the trenches are like dying right now. They're all, they all went all in at like 5 cents, and now they're like underwater. They don't understand what's happening. But there's literally billions of there's $1.3 billion in profit, and when it was at 7 cents, it's at billion. It takes a while to just absorb. And I think the team has shown that they do want to do buybacks. We'll kind of see like how things shake out, but there shouldn't be this expectation that it's just like free money and it's going to go up straight to 10 without any like Hyperliquid, at least like bounciness.
Well, listen, to be fair, like they've done the buyback. I think they started doing the buybacks now.
They started,
yeah, like
about $30 million worth, I think.
That's important. Like, so my thing is, make a argument of why this thing can't convert in Hyperliquid. If it's printing the same amount of revenue, and it's doing buybacks, why couldn't this be a $40 billion asset? We very, very well may be in a situation in 6 months where this thing goes to 40 billion. I would not flinch. Yeah.
I think the Hyperliquid one is done like automatically. It takes revenue, puts it in, and then it's the same difference, like, trying to like ever raise as a trading firm versus trade like as like a firm that is like a software SaaS company. You see the difference in like multiples of like, ARR versus like and so like if people can reliably expect that definitely like this is going to go into the chart, then they start. I mean, the multiple on Hyperliquid is a little bit rich, by the way. Like on a fully diluted base, it's a 45x. On a non-fully diluted, I guess it's like a 20 or something. But if people can see that they have some mechanism that it's like less ad hoc and it's just like automatically just pumping it in, then maybe the multiple can grow. Is that maybe how it's looked at?
I think so. I think if the buybacks are like, to the discretion of the team, then the pump token just becomes a token where you just buy it when, they fund the buyback wallet, and then you just like dump into the buybacks, and then like you repeat that process. So I feel like right now the pump token doesn't have like everyone's trust, right? Like if they can do like maybe $1 million of buybacks a day, and that's like predictable, then I feel like, you can actually hold the asset. Like right now it's like still kind of murky. But I'm sure the team will figure it out, right? They have so much fucking money. Like,
Ask right now we're trading about 10% of the ICO price, about 4.4 billion FDV. I'm long pump here and thinking of adding, given that we're so close to this price point where there was basically, I mean, I don't want to say infinite demand, but there was clearly more demand than supply. Do you think at this point, like this is a pretty attractive position to hold pump? Or
I think psychologically, like they can't let it go below 4. So,
but what does that mean, Jordy? You just put it back into the chart as we used to say, or
well, they have to like you said, they have like $2 billion or something, right? Like I don't know exactly the amount, but they've made 600 and then they raised 1.3. I mean, they're under attack by bonk, whatever is happening in the bonk ecosystem with like useless token and worthless token. There's like all kinds of like launchpad wars going on. I think they still have their like revenue. They have to just show that they're still taking care of their token. I think they have to.
All right, do a simulation analysis. Okay, in what version of this world does pump underperform and Hyperliquid vastly outperforms? Or like, I guess I would bucket this in like putting like there's from a portfolio construction, like everyone's going to maybe allocate some to Bitcoin, and then what are the odds of Hyperliquid vastly outperforming pump? And how much flows does it take for a pump to like 2x from here versus Hyperliquid? And a lot of like I'm not a trader. Like Jordy, you're the expert here, but I've started like over the years just appreciated much more of the flows game. Of course, like in comes Ripple and like defies all odds. I was just talking about like yesterday on another podcast of like why I think Ripple is probably your normie friend that's buying Ripple right now is going to outperform you if you're in the trenches. But I think pump. I could see pump. Kobe said it to me once, way back. I heard from him. He said something to the effect of like he or someone he knew made much more money on Litecoin than they did in Bitcoin because the catch-up trade is that revenge trade and like much harder and pumps harder. So if you miss Hyperliquid and pump starts developing this narrative that it's similar to Hyperliquid, to your point, Justin, that's a buy because the market's gonna just push it to that level, right? And all it takes is a couple of people. What Hyperliquid had going for it is just the pristineness of airdrop community. Everyone rallied. There's people that made a lot of money, and so you had these like very voracious people that just. But it's a great product, right?
And the funds didn't have access, right? Like Paradigm had to go buy, after the launch. Like unless you were an active trader, you didn't have tokens. And so I think the one challenge, and I told the pump team, is just everyone's already going to have access from the from that 4 billion raise. Like basically everyone who really wants it in size even can get it. It turned out, with things being shut off to Americans and UK, and they had to find other ways and buy it on perps. But that's one challenge that's different from Hyperliquid. Everybody's already in. and now everyone is just a little bit disappointed because they thought it was going to be like this amazing free multi-x right away, which was not realistic. Yes, like asset can be priced higher. Obviously, like something that makes 600 million a year can be priced a lot higher than 4B fully diluted. So I think what we're all aligning on is if they execute really well and get a good clean story from now, they have an opportunity to do amazingly well. And they'll just have to navigate, and they've shown some good chops so far. I think it's a very young, chaotic team, but they have a lot of really good instincts, and they've shown that many times. So they're in the trenches themselves right now. They have to fend off all these competitors and have to fend off all the FUD and everything going on. So it'll be fascinating to watch. But like I said, it was just so interesting to see like how divergent people thought. I was quite sure that the price was going to be, in that like $5-6 range for a while, because that's how much the market can absorb of immediate profit. And then from there, I also knew it was going to sell out right away, because once there was a pre-market, it was obvious that you would get the same funds that put money into Plasma. I don't know if you guys remember the Plasma one, but they filled 500 million instantly, and then they did another 500, and that filled in half an hour. And so once you start getting similar sources of on-chain stablecoins as Plasma, it was kind of inevitable that it was going to fill up right away. So it's kind of played out like I expected so far. I think now what matters is how the team executes, and if they can get the trust that they'll be treating this as a hyperliquid. So fascinating one. I think everyone's waiting to see the next parts of that movie. But let's switch to a couple more topics while we have you, Santi. So the other rage is Treasury Companies. I mean, I'm seeing ones for like every shitcoin under the sun now. In every country, there's like an Israeli one for, I don't want to like
Leshner buying a liquor company and realizing that the devs had infinite mint function.
Justin bought that.
Turns out that the docs allow the company to issue and dilute the shit out of you. You thought crypto FDV was bad.
Yeah.
Updatable proxy contracts also happen in TradFi. It's a feature, not a bug, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, but let's zoom out though. I mean, people have been like wondering what's going to be the SBF of this cycle, what's going to bring down the cycle, and they were saying Sailor, but now we have like Sailor copycats, and we have a ton of them, and they're hyper accelerating. The cycle. They're looking for, this like easy money from the treasury markets, because the equity markets. Santi, do you think this is what's going to bring down the cycle? I mean, it seems like a candidate.
Yeah, I am very vocal against treasury companies, in the sense of like crypto just likes to push everything to the extreme. And look, I've been surprised that Sailor and MicroStrategy have been able to pull it off, and I get structurally how they've been able to do it, basically in a way that they don't get liquidated by being levered long Bitcoin, and it's very interesting and creative. I think, look, hats off to them. The reality is there's only one Sailor, and the level of sophistication of MicroStrategy and how they've been able to structure this in size is not how your typical opportunistic low market cap operator sponsor is structuring these deals. They don't have the chops, and they're not very competent. Like pretty much 9 out of 10 people I've talked to, I'm like, I would not hire you. You know what I mean? I'm like, excuse me? Like, they can't explain things. They're just like pointing out the MicroStrategy. Look, can you make money? To Justin's point, like absolutely. Is Joe Lubin's probably more differentiated? Tom Lee's probably more differentiated than your, the vast tail end. But I do think it poses a challenge. Look, the name of the company is Inversion. Of course, I'm ascribed to Charlie Munger and that, Graham and evaluate like fundamental analysis. I don't think anyone here can justify the premium being sustaining over a prolonged period of time. It just won't. And the nasty part of it is that it unwinds, and it can definitely go negative.
I want to like explain to like the viewers a little bit like the dynamic, because it took me a while to wrap my head around it, and then I realized that Justin Sun's been doing this stuff all along. I don't know if you guys remember some of like the stable coins that Justin Sun had. There were there was like a few of them, and they would sometimes depeg. he would like not say anything. Like, there'd be some FUD. It would go down to like 90 cents, 80, 70 cents. And then he just like buys it back at 70 cents and suddenly he's made, 30%. This is like part of the potential play of these treasury companies, which is literally they can trade against the people buying in a perfect way because they have the NAV. If it goes under NAV, they just buy. Like they kind of, break open the piggy bank and they sell some tokens, so they make money. If it trades above NAV, they just issue at the monies. And so it's just free money. And the only thing that they require is just activity. They just require attention and people to trade. And as long as they trade up or down and there's volatility, you can even do what Sailor does, which is, harvest the volatility directly with converts. In essence, it's an attention game. If you can manage to get attention, and this is why like the Tom Lees, it's not that like a lot of these like visible people are more competent. It's just that they have, they have a lot of attention on them. And so they can drive trading. Like, you got Justin on his, his Robinhood after hours selling and buying. I mean, Justin's one of the, ones maybe can make money on this, but like a lot of the other participants, as long as there's participants, it like what Santiago says is true. Like they're just going to win and everybody else is going to lose. You're just at the mercy because, you're not
a game of musical chairs. As long look, and Howard Marks has I love his letters, and at some point I think he was like, listen, I know I've been bearish, I know I've been calling for the last 5 years that the market is like irrational, and he was like, I get it. You're an asset manager, you need a dance when the music is on. Just make sure you have an action plan when the music shuts down. And you better know where the exit is, and you better goddamn make sure that the door is wide enough to support all the other degens that are playing this game. And because that was not the case when Terra Luna happened.
What's the safety plan here? Do you think for someone that's trying to make sure they don't round trip their gains, like myself would be one example of that? Do you think the play is to look at top 20 treasury companies, and the second one of them dips below NAV, then maybe you start taking profit? Or how do you think about that? Like, do these, they go fine and they explode all at once, similar to Luna, or is it going to be something else?
Oh, I don't know. That's a $1 trillion question. As I said, it would really suck if in 5 years' time you said, God damn, that meme of like, son, are you winning? You're like, yeah, I was early in Ethereum. Ethereum pumps to 15K and somehow you lost money. Or like, because if the NAV is 4 times, right? Imagine if the asset goes up 3 times and you're sitting there thinking you're done pretty because you bought all these treasury shell companies or holding companies and you bought and you unsuspectingly thought that it was going to track the price of the underlying. And maybe that might be true, but I guess it would really suck if you bought it at such a premium that you actually didn't end up making as much money. And so, is that possible? Is that an edge case? Very likely. I mean, it's true.
To be clear, like myself, would never hold these for the long term. I don't hold any at this moment now. And I think probably our listeners aren't as well, but I guess I'm wondering if it's going to trickle down into actually just regular spot, right? Like if Michael Saylor is underwater and MicroStrategy is below NAV, like what does that do to Bitcoin? Like presumably it's not going to be good. Maybe Saylor doesn't have to sell, but maybe some of these other treasury companies that have stacked billions of dollars of Bitcoin are forced to.
And like the fear that they might sell might be enough, right? They don't even have to sell. It's like if people fear that they might sell, then people just like might start selling spot.
It's a spiral effect that this is how the NAV gets crushed, right? Look at Upexi. And for full disclosure, I did a small position there. I did not contribute locked FTX Sol. I put in fresh US American dollars into it. And look at the vol of that thing. This is Upexi, UPXI. And they've now announced Big Brain Holdings has put like 150 million more of Sol into it. I've heard rumblings of like Joe's vehicle raising billions of dollars of locked FTX Sol. But like, look at the vol in that thing is very different than the vol that you have in Solana. So I don't know, like Jordy, I'm actually really curious to hear your thoughts on, like, do you actually participate in these things, or do you, being a sophisticated person that you are, like, or would rather use perps or options or other mechanisms, because that's, I would argue that like the only, this is like a preying on the convenience factor of like, oh, it's a levered bet, and so I don't want to, in the case of MicroStrategy, is like, you're not going to get liquidated, it's a levered bet on Bitcoin. And then some of these are peddling the fact that they're going to do other things like staking services and validation.
I don't even think it's a levered bet on Bitcoin, honestly. Like, none of these things are even levered bets on any of the tokens. They're just bets on the team being able to, like I said, just generate this sort of like arb profit and being able to like enter at a price that, it's so weird. I hate these games with like the lockup again. You like Pantera, everyone's done a bunch of these and they're all up like X, multi-X, and then there's like a 6-month lockup. And like, what's going to happen when that lockup comes? And what's the liquidity on these things? I mean, who's gonna market make and put bids and offers on these things once things start getting crazy? It's kind of wild to me. I much prefer like the on-chain economy. I'm much more of a purist and a token guy than these like, yeah, they're saying soon we're going to have like a tokenized version of the wrapped equity of the token. Like it's going to come like full circle. It's yeah, it's not something that we've participated in. We've looked at a few. I think the Hyperliquid one that went out kind of made sense because that one is quite hard to get access to, and there are people that want to get access to it. I think there's a couple more that have a similar like reason to exist, but most of these don't. And I think it's going to be, it's a fight for attention. Like even for the Bitcoin ones, only a few will manage to keep enough attention. I do wonder if it does make sense in some of these countries. I think Nakamoto told us that they're supporting in many countries now. You got them all across the world in Scandinavia, and there's like in Asia. There's all kinds of like national stock exchanges that are going to have a Bitcoin company. And maybe for some of these countries, for some of these people, like it does make sense. But it's like Grayscale 2.0. It does feel like inevitably, we'll be above NAV and then it'll be under NAV, and then people are going to want to figure out how to convert it out, or I don't know.
I hope it doesn't blow up, but I do think that this probably continues for the next 6 months, and then who knows after that.
Let's finish on this topic then. Like, so obviously we're in a massive mini liquidity cycle right now. I've said before, like I
love how you just said that, which is like, you could massive liquidity cycle. Why don't you just call it a massive bull market? Just caveat.
He's a sophisticated individual.
He's a sophisticated individual. Jordy's going to be right no matter what, right? Because if it market crashes tomorrow, he's like, I told you it was sophisticated. It was like, like flows were just going out, brother in Christ, not in.
It's good.
That's true. That's 100% true. That I'm not yet convinced that it is a bull market. I think it is in some ways, but not like in the traditional way. Maybe I know you guys put out an episode that it's confirmed. I think like we do continue to melt up in some of these assets, but are we going to have like a whole year of things going up? I really don't know. So yeah, I think this is like a liquidity surge, and we'll see like what it turns into. But I guess this is the question then. Like we were saying earlier, it sniffs like up and then down, but it just sniffs like has to go up first. Like the momentum is too much. You said 6 months. Fair.
It's incredibly arbitrary, and I'd have no basis for that. It's just that it sounds nice, and but I mean, so the interesting thing is Ripple's pumping hard, and I read a lot into that.
Yeah.
Why? Because said differently, if you get 10 texts from people, normies, they're likely going to ask you about 2, maybe 3 assets. Not Bitcoin. They're going to ask you about Ripple, Cardano, and so XRP, Cardano, and maybe some other random shit you never heard of, like Hedera or something like that. No, I'm dead serious. Do they ask you about like Maker or Hyperliquid? Maybe Hyperliquid. Probably Fartcoin. You know what I mean? Like they're gonna ask you. This is where I'm going. Three things they're gonna ask you. All right, and I'm willing to someone make me a market, and we can somehow collect information, right? But it's Ripple, Cardano, and Fartcoin, maybe Doge. That's it. Like that's just and look at the top 10 to understand.
But those tourists don't tend to like last long. Like the Doge cycle is not a long part of the cycle, right? Like when that stuff.
Hold on, but wait a minute. You talk about flows. You want to understand where flows go. They go to Doge, Ripple, Cardano, and legacy coins. Why? Because they've captured the mind share of an entire tourists that come and go. So in the summer, people go to Capri in Italy and the south of France. Same thing here. Most of the new flows, like crypto, still continues to be a retail phenomenon. So I guess like I hate to think like that, but the sad reality of crypto is that it's just a casino at the moment. Enter Inversion, but I don't want to shill my project. But nonetheless, if you just take that view, then yeah, of course, like I'm not surprised, nor am I going to make a prediction that the top 10 composition is going to dramatically change because, man, I was making a prediction 4 or 5 years ago that Cardano is going to drop off at the top 10. It's now top 10 if you exclude Tether and USDC from that list.
I mean, we all recognize these things have this retail phenomenon, but it's so hard to touch this stuff. Are you actually long any of this, or
I don't know any of that. I mean, full disclosure, I was an early investor in Hedera, but a long, honestly, long punch out of that one. I've had wallets that have owned pretty much all these things. You keep
But Santi, I heard it like on your last show. You're saying now like 50% Bitcoin makes sense, and that's quite new from you. Like, what's changed there?
Well, two things. On a personal level, I just have zero time. I don't consider myself a trader. Crypto forces you to think about risk management because if something grows to a point where you are going to make mistakes, and that's the first lesson I learned in crypto, which is coming at it from a venture standpoint, I had to adjust to thinking as a trader purely for risk management reasons. That's a hard lesson. The other one now is I don't have time. I'm not actively trading these things. I'm 100% dedicating my time to building. But I will say a part of me now thinks that Bitcoin is the ultimate meme. Subtle but important things like on Bloomberg, you have the denominator now has changed to millions, and now it's 0.1 Bitcoin. And I mean, God, you got to think that in the next 10 years, Bitcoin's going to touch 1 million. And it's going to be glorious. And it would suck that if you're here 2025 and in 10 years time, your kids say, daddy, or mommy, you're in crypto. You must be winning so hard. And you're like, no, son, I bought, restaked derivative and,
Eigen layer.
I bought Eigen layer. And your normie friend out there says, dude, what are you talking about? You introduced me to Bitcoin and I bought Cardano and Ripple, and I'm sitting on a boat in the south of France. Listen, I've seen this story time and time again. The thing that you should always be asking you, which goes back to how we started this discussion, was how many incremental risk units are you taking for your expected return? And in my calculus, I think that Bitcoin continues to give you. I now am of the mind that Bitcoin's become far and far less risky, where I'm trading very little incremental risk units to get a pretty asymmetric return. That, to me, that ratio is probably the most compelling of any other asset class out there.
Let's go to pasta. Justin, you want to kick off pastas?
Yeah, so I mean, it's been obviously a great couple weeks for ETH holders. I've been very euphoric, excited, active in all the Telegram chats. I'm scrolling my feed and I see this tweet and my jaw drops. I'm super excited. I'm euphoric, but I'm even more euphoric now. And I see that Evgeny from Wintermute tweets, there is, in quotes, clearly almost no hashtag ETH available for sale on Wintermute OTC desk. I'm sending this to the group chats. I'm all excited. They're literally running out of ETH. Exchange ETH supplies at an all-time low. Sure enough, I pinged Jordy and was like, Jordy, is this true at all? It's like, no, it's very easy to get new ETH. He's just trolling.
And it's a troll, but he got 1,000 views. So very, very good engagement for him there. I think Evgeny's learning the dark art.
Yeah. So there's no credence to this. They're running out of coins on the exchange, right? There's always more coins.
There is a lot of ETH out there. No one's running out of ETH right now.
120 million ETH out there.
Taiki, what do you got?
Yeah, so I think, maybe it was a month ago, we had a main character. His name was James Wynn. And, he was this martingale long Bitcoin, right? He was getting all this attention. He was really enjoying life. I think he gained a bunch of followers. He had a meme coin he was shilling too. So I was like, okay, like, he must be doing fairly well now, right? I mean, like everything's working out. And Justin, if you can share my screen, I found out that, James Wynn, a couple days ago, he was all caps going full short, and then he deleted his account. So it's just never stop gambling, but just never get liquidated.
Santi, do you have a pasta?
Yeah, I do. It's well, no surprise. Everyone saw the CEO that was cut. There it is, Jeff Park coming in, Savage Street. Said my CEO would never cheat, and it's that picture of them, in the concert. Which I don't know.
Man.
Yeah, thoughts on this?
That I love when the mainstream memes kind of come into crypto. That video was just so viral. It just ignited something in everybody. I saw. All right, let's finish up with my pasta. I know you have to run. So I have how Kobe always like has a picture of some blonde person. He's like, "This is not me, guys." So this is the latest one, but there's like an amazing twist here that kind of ties into the AI conversation. So Kobe, responds to like some girl here. He says, "Please stop tagging me. Looks nothing like me." Okay, the usual Kobe tweet. And then somebody says, "Hey Grok, does the original photo resemble Kobe or Jordan Fish?" And then we have a neutral observer. This is what we're talking about before. This is like the base truth says, upon close analysis, Hunter Schafer does bear a notable resemblance to Kobe Jordan Fish, particularly in facial structure, blue eyes, and fair features. The similarity has been more pronounced. This was just the most amusing thing I've seen. This was amazing. So I think
Kobe down below says, "What the fuck?"
Can you scroll down a little more, Justin? Oh, there
wow.
it is.
He's apologizing. He's like, "Sorry, Kobe. It is what it is. It's why the meme endures. Embrace the twin vibes." So, this is a little bit better than the what was that AI XBT kind of thing that was talking on Twitter. I think Grok is leveled up. This is much more enjoyable to read. I haven't seen that AI XBT thing on my timeline in a while.
I still follow it sometimes.
Yeah?
Like once in a blue moon,
Sometimes
it teaches me something new. I'm like, okay, like that's kind of
okay. All right. Cool. Santi, thank you so much for coming. It's been a blast having you on. And lads, we don't know the next time, but we'll try to make it shorter than the last one and be with you soon. Take care.